Okay, well, I think we still have the same people in the attendees, so that's great. Just for the sake of our recording, I am going to repeat myself, which is that this is an open free help session. So by all means, we encourage questions. We want to hear from you guys. Submit your questions in the Q&A, use the chat to request a topic. This is intended as free help, and you can go to our website at findskills.com/free help to find more free help sessions, not just in Lead Docket, but also in Fileline, which happens weekly, and Lead Docket, which is currently monthly. So today we're going to talk about automations. In the meantime, we're going to walk through what automations are in Lead Docket. We'll just dive right into that. But again, please, we'll keep an eye out. So if you have your own requests or topics that we should discuss instead, absolutely happy to take a pause and go down some other questions as well. All right, and then for who you have with you today, my name is Sade. Erica is here. I think her camera might be having some technical trouble, but we're going to be walking you guys through automations in Lead Docket today and monitoring the chat. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start. I want to start really broad at first of what even is an automation. I think today things people really throw around that term a lot, and especially when we're talking about automated CRMs like Lead Docket, where there's a lot of built-in automation tools we can use. People tend to just overuse or misuse the word. So let's even break down when within the scope of lead tracking, Lead Docket, and Filevine, what even is an automation? And technically, an automation is quite literally just using the system to automatically do something, automatically trigger an action without your staff having to manually do it. And there are some things that Lead Docket can do naturally that uses built-in automation. So you don't have to do anything extra. You don't have to use other resources. But also, we've got a tool called Lead Docket Automation Rules. And this is an additional feature that you guys can purchase. You can add it on to your Lead Docket, and this is going to allow you to open up a whole nother box of automation abilities. And then on top of that, we've got things that Lead Docket can do. We've got this additional package that Lead Docket can do. And then you might be wondering, well, what if I want to do something that isn't available in the system? And that's where we can even go a step further and create our own custom automations using other tools. So when I say other tools, most commonly we're going to be using Zapier, if you've heard of that. Zapier is a third-party tool that helps with automation between two systems that don't naturally talk to each other. So even though Lead Docket may not naturally speak with Facebook, for example, you can integrate the two and you can set up an automation that connects the two or triggers certain actions that your team does not have to do manually. So let's just kind of dive right in. Those are three of the topics that we'll kind of talk about. But at the surface level, I want to take a second to talk about what Lead Docket can just do. So this is right out of the box. You've purchased Lead Docket, you're getting set up, or maybe you're already using it, and you are tired of your team having to manually do certain tasks. So let's make sure you guys know what is inside Lead Docket. Now, one of the most common features that people love about Lead Docket is going to be the automated messages. So people don't typically think of this as an automation anymore, but it is. It is an automation. And so what these are, and they're the message template tools, is you can do based off of certain status triggers. So if we put somebody into a chase, for example, or a drip campaign, or you can do it based off of triggering a document signature. So maybe I've sent a retainer to the client. Based off of actions that happen naturally as part of your workflow, you can automatically send messages to the clients throughout the process. So the most common one that you see for this is going to, of course, be your chase. So when you are actively pursuing potential clients that have come in from your website, for example, and you can't get them on the phone, you want them to be receiving consistent follow-up, consistent communication, even when your team might be busy on the phones helping others. And that's where the automated messages come in. So just by putting them into the chase status, your team can then say, okay, let's go ahead and send out some messaging, keep us top of mind. And if they communicate, it obviously comes right back into Lead Docket. So automated messages, and pretty much tangentially to that is going to be your tasks, automated tasks. So the way I typically describe it is, you usually think of messages and tasks as completely separate things, but tasks are really messages internally. So it's telling your internal team to do something. Messages are external. And we have the ability to automate both of those based off of triggers inside Lead Docket. And the editors for those are going to look almost identical to each other. So here on my screen over here, if I go to Manage and Message Templates, you'll see the screen doesn't really change that much between the two of those. So let's go ahead and actually set up a message template together real quick. And if I hit Add New, and you'll see you get to choose, let's go ahead and send a text message. Now, as part of any sort of automation, especially user-friendly ones, again, I've said the word trigger a couple times, you have to determine what is going to trigger this automation. What is going to happen inside Lead Docket that we're going to say, do this action. And in Lead Docket, we make it very user-friendly to dictate what those triggers are and what those rules are. So up at the very top here, we've got the most obvious pieces. So we want to name our message template. We're going to make this a test chase text. And then you might want to say, hi, client name. Now my client name is going to change. So thankfully we have this field to insert a message. So all you have to do is click this. And for any variable, you can just search what you're looking for. Might have to try a couple times. We'll do first name, hit insert. And now it's going to send your client name that is in Lead Docket. So hi, client first name, please contact us at your earliest convenience. Now you'd probably include a lot more than that, but just for today, we're going to keep it here. So let's talk about those triggers. So if you scroll down, you're going to see a set of creation rules and triggers here. And you're going to see that this just outlines exactly what you want to prompt this text to go out. So you're going to choose your status. What status should they be in order for this message to go out? We've been talking frequently about chase, so I'm going to go ahead and select chase here. And then these are going to be rules that dictate. So do we want to limit it to certain case types? Do we want to limit it to certain severity levels, offices, opportunity sources, marketing sources? This whole list that you see here, you can send messages in English or Spanish depending on what's selected. So that's what these are. These are going to be your filters, your creation rules. And then we have those triggers that I've been talking about a couple times here. So I'm going to kind of break this down one by one. I am actually going to go through all of these because this is actually one of the most common questions we get is how to understand these triggers here. So if you'll see, there's going to be your lead created trigger. So that is going to say every single time I create a brand new lead, so I hit add lead and I put them into Chase, let's do this action, right? Then we've got our status changed. So not adding a brand new lead, but taking a lead that already exists. Maybe they're in under review, and then you try to get in touch with them and you move them into a chase. So that's going to be a pre-existing lead that you status change into chase. And we want this action to happen. Then we've got this sub-status change, which if you are familiar with Lead Docket, I'm sure you are if you're on this call, you'll know that we have sub-statuses inside Lead Docket. So within Chase, we've got a first attempt, a second attempt, a third attempt, and so on. And so that's what this trigger is going to be. It's saying, okay, well, if it's already in Chase in a certain substatus and we change that substatus, let's trigger this action. And then our last one here of the statuses is status saved. And that's going to be, let's say they're already in Chase 1, and we accidentally, for whatever reason, we want to resend them the Chase 1 message. Maybe they didn't get it for any reason. We had to update the phone number. If we have this selected, then every time you resave them into that exact same status and substatus combo, it's going to trigger this message. So I break those down like that because all four of these are related to statuses, but they all do something slightly different. They all trigger based off of a slightly different action. And a lot of times you're going to find that anything that you do lead created on, you might end up doing status changed on. That's not a rule, it's just common. So just as a forewarning, if you're thinking, okay, well, whenever I put a lead into Chase, I want this to happen, you got to remember sometimes you're creating from scratch and sometimes you're going to be changing somebody who's already in the system. I think the rest of these triggers are much more self-explanatory. So I'm going to scroll down and you see you've sent an electronic signature document. You've received an electronic signature document, which is just a long way of saying a Vine sign or a DocuSign doc. and lead form sent and lead form received, which if you're not familiar with lead forms, those are another piece that can be automated in Lead Docket. Well, let's just put a pin in that. We'll come back to it in a second. But you can have it send out messages when you send out a form. And then if you have received a form, you can send out a message like a thank you form or something. So that's a brief overview, maybe a little too in-depth. And the reason that I actually wanted to start with message templates, which I think is one of the most common things you'll have already been using in Lead Docket, is because really understanding these rules and these creation triggers is going to lay the foundation for understanding what an automation is and how do I determine if there's an automation that can do what I'm looking to do. So we just went through a list of all of those triggers. So when something happens in this status, I want to send this message. What if when something happens in a status, we want to trigger a different action? Or what if when it gets put into a certain status, we want to trigger a different action? So that's going to be the key question, is that action that I want it to trigger, can Lead Docket do it? And we can do a lot of things natively, but we do end up going to automation rules as the next level for can it do it? So automations is an additional feature in Lead Docket. Again, you do have to purchase it, and you get access to this extra tab here in your Manage, which is a whole set of new user-friendly tools to go ahead and create even more automations like what we just looked at. So you'll see we have some in here. This is a test environment, so we don't actually use these, but I'm going to go ahead and hit Add New up in the top right-hand corner. And let's take a look at what this one looks like, because it's going to be a little bit different than what we were just looking at. So right from the start, we have title. I'm just going to give you a sneak peek. What we're going to do for this automation is we are going to say change the status, update the status to signed up every time we get a signed document. So that's what I'm going to name it. Signed document, update status to signed up. And then what do you want to automate? Once again, you can see that this is going to be very user-friendly. So you've got a certain set of options. So if I want to change a status, I can change a status based off of an action. If I want to send a VineSign template, I can do that based off of a specific action or trigger. You can also send leads directly to FileVine with a trigger. You can send a lead form, and then you can send a payment request. I said we'd put a pin in the lead form. I'm going to definitely put a pin in the payment request unless there's any specific questions on it, because otherwise we can do a whole separate call on that. But yeah, so let's take a look. I mentioned what were we going to do? We are going to update the status to signed up once we get a signed document back. So what do I want to automate? I want to automate my change status. I want to change the status when blank. That's my trigger. And what should trigger this automation to run? I'm saying is when a document is signed. So you are going to see, just like this click list of what we can automate, we're going to have a click list of what can trigger that automation. It is going to change depending on which one you select. So change status, you can do that based off of a lot of items. But let's go ahead and say we actually wanted to send a lead form. And we're going to see you can actually only send a lead form based off of a status change. So some of these are going to have slightly different triggers. Your change status is going to have the most options. So that's why I like to use this one as my demonstration. So we're going to change the status, and then you can see those triggers. So for this example, what we're going to do is electronic signature document signed. So every time somebody signs the contract, we've sent them in VineSign, Lead Docket's going to recognize that signature. It's going to come into Lead Docket, and it's going to update the status for us. We've said all of that just based off of these two things so far. We could do one of these other things. So we could just say, you know, after a certain period of time, change the status, let's say to rejected. If they don't sign the contract within 48 hours, we're going to turn them down. Probably not likely, but that's an option. We can do a status change off of another status change. Those are going to be probably more specific situations. This was actually partially built for a very specific referral workflow that I would love to take some time to talk about if we have a second at the end of here. But we'll just go through the rest of these triggers first. So we've got lead form completed. If somebody completes a lead form, we can change the status. Documents sent. So if you want to send out a document and then change the status to contract sent, and then when they sign the document, we'll change the status to signed. So you can have multiple automations that build off of each other. Lead form sent, just like completed. We've got if the lead has been sent to FileVine, you can also trigger an automation. So that would be a great use case for welcome letters, just, final text messages saying, hey, here's a list of your team members. This is going to be your paralegal. Here's a phone number you can reach us at, just based off of when you've pushed them into the CRM. Payment completed and payment request sent, which once again, that's going to have to be a separate topic. Unless you have specific questions, please feel free. You can throw them in the chat. We can definitely take a tangent. But back to what we're building out here is we want to say signed document. We're going to change it to signed up. So change status. Our trigger is electronic document signed. And then when we scroll down, this should look very familiar because it looks very similar to what we had on our message templates. And these are going to be the rules of what that means. So when an electronic document is signed in what status? They should probably be in pending sign up or an equivalent status if you guys have that. So we're going to say now pending sign up electronic signature. If a doc is signed, move them. And technically we haven't said that we're going to move them to signed up yet, but we're going to move them into signed up. If you have any other rules that you want to take place, so limit it to certain case types, offices, marketing sources, everything you see here. And if I scroll way down, our very last thing is which status should that lead change to? And we are saying in this case that we want to change them to signed up. So very user-friendly. A couple things that I want to point out here. Run only during business hours. This is going to default to yes. And you might want to change it to no, just depending on the automation that you're doing. But this means that that automation is only going to take place if the action occurs during your business hours. And what are your business hours? If you go down to settings underneath your manage tab, you're going to see your business open time, your business close time, and your time zone. So it's always going to pick these times as the basis for what to consider business hours. The other one is going to be delete on message received. This is also going to default to yes. You may want to toggle this over to no. And what that means is it wants to stop an automation if there is a message received onto that lead. So for example, if we turned on this right now as yes, with move them into signed up when they sign a document, let's say they sign the contract, but they also send us a text message and they say, hey, did you get my contract? This automation is not going to run in that case because we've received a message and it's just saying, hey, we got a message from this client. You might want to look at it before we automatically update the status. So that's why you can change it to no, because maybe you want it to run regardless. This is a situation if we have a signed contract, we want it in signed up. But that's not always going to be the case with your automation. So depending on the circumstances, you may want to change that. And then delete on status change, you'll see you cannot change this. This is going to be defaulted to yes for almost every single one of them. And the reason for that being is that we said if we want a contract is signed in pending sign up, do this action. And so if a status is changed, it's not going to do that action any longer. Which brings me, before we go into this new or this required field values, to another point I want to make. When I said this, I said if we sign a contract in pending sign up, because more often than not, they should be in pending sign up if you sent them a contract. Let's go ahead and save it. Oh, and it turns out I have an automation like this already. But that's only going to work for the leads that are already in the pending sign up electronic signature doc. So what if we want to say anytime we get a doc sent back to us from any status? That does mean that you're going to have to do a different automation per status. So it can only be one status at a time. What I would do is I would just go in and completely recreate that exact same automation. But this time we'd go change status, electronic document signed. And then let's go ahead and say, what if they forget to put it in a pending sign up and we sent someone in Chase a contract? Then I would have it set to be in Chase, check for a document that's signed, and it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to change the status to signed up. So that's one common mistake that people make is you do end up having to make multiple automations per status if it's going to be an action that could happen across statuses. Now, the last thing that I didn't talk about here is going to be this required custom field values, which this is a great feature because this is going to limit the automation to only run based off of answers in your questionnaire. So this opens up a whole world of possibilities where we can receive leads from your website, for example, They can come into Lead Docket. We can send them that lead form that keeps coming up on today's call. We can ask them a set of questions. And then when they come back and they've answered those questions, we can optionally decide, let's put them in a specific status based off of those answers. So maybe something as simple as, were you injured in your accident? And it comes back and it's no. We're not going to take that case more than likely. I mean, all practice areas are a little different. You might just want to put them directly into a rejected or a turn down and then send them automated messages saying, hey, I'm sorry, we can't help you. Here are your options. And then if they say yes, maybe you want to put them into pending sign up and directly send them a contract. So I'm diving into this because that is actually what we've done for some clients, is using these automation rules. We can set up a fully automated intake depending on your specific process. So someone can make it to your website and then have a signed contract all overnight, depending on if your questionnaire allows for it and where questions we're asking them. Now, how frequently is somebody going to go from website entry to signed contract overnight before somebody's spoken to them? I actually don't know the numbers on that. Um, but we can get them into the appropriate process based off of how far along they came. So they'll either be in a certain status to indicate they at least filled out the questionnaire, or that all they did was fill out the website form, or they actually texted in requesting a call back. And all of that can happen when your staff is on the phone. It can happen overnight, and it just helps alleviate some of that manual work that's happening and frees up your staff to help out with more live inquiries. Okay, I kind of was talking for a long time there. I don't think we have any questions in the chat or the Q&A that I see, unless I'm missing anything. Nope, we should be good. All right, so I did hint that one of the main things that this automation tool was built for was for referrals. And I would love to take a second, because anybody who is sending outgoing referrals should purchase automations, in my opinion. And the reason is because it just opens up a whole new realm of possibility for you. So if you're not familiar in Lead Docket, there's already quite a bit of automation set up in here where you can automatically send leads to a specific source. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on mine, my test one here, Flinestra. So I have sent them a bunch of referral leads, right? We've got a list of them that are pending review. We've got a list that are being reviewed. With none of them, but we've got a list that have already been signed up. And then maybe you have something like dropped here. And here, this is actually what the firm sees. And they can come in here and they can update this. So they'll say, okay, well, I'll take a look at Jake. And we did sign Jake. He's treating. We signed up this lead. And by sending this update through, not only does it move it into the signed up for them, so we see Jake is here, but Jake in your Lead Docket is also now updated appropriately. So that's built into Lead Docket. That's already there. But what can we do with the automation tool is you can, rather than if they reject it or turn it down, having to move on to the next firm yourself or decide what to do with it, we can put it into rejected, we can put it into referred and send it to a different person. You can automate that. So let's go take a look at the automation rules here. And I'm actually going to look at, I believe we probably have one. We sure do. So let's go ahead and just open this one that already exists. And you're going to see time passed on referred. So if it's in pending review, we're going to send it to the next referral and put it back into pending review. So let's talk through why you would do it that way. Our automate is we're changing the status after a certain amount of time has passed. And that time is 12 business hours from now. So what we're saying is when we put it into referred and we send it to a firm, they have 12 hours to look at that and tell us that they'd like it. And then we're going to move it on to the next status. We're going to change the status, but we're actually going to put it right back into referred pending review, and we can send it to another firm on a list of people. So it's kind of like a circle. It's in pending review, and if they don't respond in 12 hours, we're going to move on to the next firm. And then that firm has 12 hours, and then we're going to move on to the next firm, and so on and so forth until it gets to the end. You can do that based off of time passed. You can also do that based off of them coming in here and saying, no, we don't want the lead. So if I come in here and I say decline, I'm going to turn this down. I didn't want this lead. Well, we can have it automatic. It's going to say, okay, it's been declined. Let's go ahead and send it to the next firm in the list. So that is going to be a huge time saver. Again, if you are sending outgoing referrals, I absolutely recommend doing that. And you can see what it's going to look like on the staff side is when you hit referred, you can put somebody in depending review. And then you have this referral method. So right now you are probably very familiar with a specific firm, but what you can do is you can pick a group and then you have a pre-made group here where you're going to cycle through the firms and see if anybody's going to accept that lead and sign it up so that you can follow through. Of course, if it ends up declined by all firms, depending on what your process is, you'll then have to reach out and say, unfortunately, we're not able to help or assist you. And then you can step in from there. All right, Erica, do you think I missed anything?
No, I think that was really good. We did have a question in the chat that I just answered regarding automation rules not showing up. Since they're an add-on feature, if you're not seeing it and you're an admin, then it just might be something your team hasn't purchased yet. Or if you've just recently purchased it, maybe it just hasn't been activated, but your account rep or your account executive would be a good resource there to discuss that further either way.
Yep, exactly. That's perfect. If you don't see it, it's probably because you don't have it turned on yet. All right, any other questions, concerns, things? All right, cool. Um, I'm gonna take a step higher now. Obviously, we did not open up the whole door to what lead docket automations can do, what the built-in automated system can already do. There's tons of features in there. It would be honestly impossible to go through every single possible automation we can run. Um, but what about if you saw something on this list or you didn't see something on this list and you're like, well, we still want to automate X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't look like this tool offers it for us. I'm still probably going to recommend you get this tool because it's good and it still helps us with pairing it with external sources. But you heard me say the word Zapier earlier, and that's where Zapier comes into play. This is one of our favorite tools in Lead Docket, and the reason being that it just lets us do so much more. And so, if what you cannot want to do cannot be achieved natively inside of Lead Docket, our first go-to is going to be to go to Zapier. So using Zapier, you can see actually right from the front page here, it says, what would you like to automate? And again, Zapier, this is not affiliated with Lead Docket, but what it does is it allows you to connect two or more different sites, apps, sources that wouldn't normally be able to talk to each other. And so what we have here is we can use this system to then come in and say, okay, well, let's connect our Facebook. And let's say when something happens in Facebook, we want it to trigger something in Lead Docket. And when something happens in Lead Docket, we want it to send something to a Google Sheet for somebody to review. Options are limitless. We've talked about Zapier in some of our other videos, and I really don't think I'm going to be able to get into the weeds on how to work inside of Zapier on this call, but I did want to show it to you because using Zapier, we use it all the time, and it's going to open up a whole realm of apps that you guys can use. Let me scroll over to this page here. But you can see you can connect things with Calendly, CallRail, Dialpad, emails, Filevine, Gmail. So the list is limitless. And so I do recommend if you're ever curious how you can connect something, this is also heading into the realm of integrations. But if you're ever curious, well, can I make such and such happen with Lead Docket? Come open Zapier, even if you don't have an account yet, and just type it in. And more than likely, it's going to show you if something can be done. Oh, I'm using an AI thing. I like to go over to the apps more than likely and then search the apps. And you can do this once again, even if you don't have a account, and you can just see if something is going to be able to connect. It looks like my internet is having, there we go, Google Sheets. So you can see, yes, Google Sheets can connect with Zapier, and that means that I can connect and automate my Google Sheets with Lead Docket. It just depends on what I want to do. All right. I think that's probably a good stopping point for automations. Just because it came up so many times, I am going to show you what this lead forms tab is. So I brought up lead forms because you can automate messages when you send and receive. You can automate status changes when you send and receive based off of the answers on these lead forms. You can send them to one status versus another status. So these are really helpful. And if you're not using them, this is a built-in tool to Lead Docket. It does not cost extra. You already have this available to you. The only restriction is that it is based off of case type. So you get one questionnaire per case type, and you have to make a different questionnaire per case type. So where you come for that is going to be underneath your manage and lead forms. And you can see we've already got a couple made here. So let's actually just take a peek at it. And if we go to our let's go to our motor vehicle accident. And if I click into it, you see we've got a list of questions: first name, last name, mobile phone, home phone. And on the left-hand side is a list of all the questions you can add. So it's going to be your standard fields and any custom field that you guys have. So is the caller the client, for example? Let's go ahead and say yes, no, and then the caller relationship. Oops. And you'll notice I've added those in the wrong order. All I have to do is once it's over here, you see these arrows, and I can drag and move different questions elsewhere. So is the caller the client? If the answer is no, what's the relationship? And then you can build it out from there. So we can add, were you at fault in the incident? And let's go ahead and just publish this as is, and I can show it to you. And this is exactly what you're sending to the client. So the client is going to get what this questionnaire. You can make fields required. And then, like I said, if you say, let's say the caller is not the client, and then were you at fault for the incident? Actually, oh, we've got that wrong in our sandbox. But let's go ahead and say that the caller is the client. And then were you at fault for this incident? If they say yes and submit this form, you're going to send them into a different status. If they say no and submit this form, you can send them into like a set, go ahead and send them a question or excuse me, a retainer or a fee agreement. So limitless options. If you haven't seen that tool, I just wanted to show it since I said that word quite a few times today. All right. Well, I don't have anything else on automation. So last opportunity for any questions today, but otherwise we do have free help at least once a month for Lead Docket, weekly for FileVine, and you can always go to our website and submit your questions there. We're always happy to jump on a quick call and just walk through your problem, see if it's something we can help with, even in the moment, or if it requires additional scoping. All right, I don't think we have any other questions. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.